I don't know if any of this Apple stuff is relevant anymore. Samsung suit definitely isn't relevant anymore. We could talk about the tracking some more.
No, it's okay.
Even though this is ridiculously old, we have to talk about this one. Yeah, you know, Amazon.
Oh, on the App Store suit?
Yes.
Move on.
All right.
That's like so. I'm tired of all these ridiculous things. Yeah.
I personally, I hope a judge agrees with Amazon's stance on that, because this never should have been approved in the first place. You know.
Yeah, I want to see the U.S. Patent Office get their act together. You know, like just like, you know, they can't just be going, you know, I'm calling my friends like instant message and pretend to do work, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they're like I said, most of this stuff is ridiculously old at this point because it's just never got covered. It's like moving on to Google though. You know, I'm not sure this first one's relevant anymore. It's like Google's basically released a PR video. You can find it on YouTube, which talks about how Google is revolutionary in protecting your data and privacy and yada yada. It's basically a PSA to say basically Google does not need to be regulated. And I don't think Google needs to be regulated. The last thing I want is Google to fall under federal regulation and the whole internet to get fucked up. But it's so obvious that is not about convincing people that Google is safe and secure. It's about convincing people that they shouldn't be afraid of Google.
You think they're shooting themselves in the foot? It's like, yeah, you don't want to, you know, like, we're not going to hurt you, I swear, you know?
I think it's more a step that it's sad that we live in a world where that's even remotely necessary. That, you know, people are just so easy to get rabbled up in a fearmonger thing that, you know, just, oh, be afraid, you know, blah blah's tracking you, blah blah knows everything about you, blah 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 blah. Vote for me, trade your liberties, blah blah. It's like it's sad.
Yeah, hey, well, look, you know, he was paying lip service to the U.S. government. Come on, let's be real. That whole interview is because they just came out of all this crap and law changes, and he's just paying lip service. Look, if I were in his shoes, and then you have Uncle Sam, unfortunately, which I hope all of us would say needs to step the hell off of it, but because they're there and they demand all this damn crap and monthly histories of searches and all this other crap, they're going to pay lip service and say, you know, okay, fine, I'm going to give you some PR and lobby a little bit on this TV show and in these blogs. Stay the hell off my back, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, unfortunately and this is one of the things I worry about a little bit with Google going forward, with so many of the things Google wants to get into. If they want, basically they're going to have to do a lot of ass kissing to basically go, hey, federal government, let capitalism and free competition take place in the United States. You know, let them.
Oh my God! Exactly.
If federal regulators, if they're going to company, why don't they come to Apple? You know, because they can't deserve it.
You know, honestly, we need to be taking a lot of this red tape back as it is. A lot of it needs to just be shredded and thrown away. As, you know, okay, this was something we've proven doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know?
Like a perfect example. I got into a slight debate about. Fortune had this whole article on how Steve Jobs is like this dictator at Apple and all this other crap. See, I had the privilege of working for Microsoft under contract, and I never got to go to Washington or I worked here in Houston. It was a very relaxed environment. However, if you missed your deadline or were not anywhere, or if what you presented was a joke at deadline, you were pretty much barbecue. But the way it would go is that people were like, okay, well, you know, fine, Steve Jobs is this and that. See, one thing I always argued that Jobs has never changed his personality, no matter the age that he's at, and that's what he is. Gates is as what he is, right? Mm-hmm. But Apple is now encroaching in markets, okay, where they are really becoming huge, and the government is taking attention. And Jobs' personality comes into play when the government starts saying, well, Apple, you're doing this and that, and it could be unfounded, it could be founded. We're all for less red tape, but then nonetheless, Apple is now getting into the arena, really, of where Microsoft has been and other companies have been, and say, hey, welcome to the club, Apple.
Yeah.
And they're going to start contending with these government regulatory committees, and that's going to be a big deal.
Well, no, don't take this the wrong way, but that's always been one of my big beefs with Apple as a company. That, basically they're guilty of all the same crimes, but somehow they're the good guy. No, they're just...
It's not that they're guilty. You have to wait. If we're talking about the Sherman Act law, you actually have to be defined as a monopoly for it to actually be infringed.
Well, no. I know that, and I'm not saying that Apple should be beat over the stick with those any more than Microsoft or Google or anybody else did. I'm just like, they're not the innocent savior they're made out to be. They're a business just like all the other businesses, and
let's put it in context, though. If you are a monopoly and you are that large, what you do decide to do if it's closed has an impact on much more of the market. Versus if you're a smaller player, and what you decide to do in saying closing your ecosystem has no impact on other competitors. But as they grow, and that status changes from being the underdog to the big dog, then they have to change their tactics. Because then, when you decide to have a closed ecosystem, and you are finally declared legally a monopoly, you then have an impact on other business. And I'm not talking about competitively, I'm talking about what is defined under the Sherman Act and things like that.
No, I know, and honestly, that's a reality I don't think Apple's really ready for as a company, because their current business model is really built on being able to be monopolistic, because, like you're saying, they're not a monopoly. As soon as they even remotely come close to even getting a serious chunk in anything, which, in some ways they're a victim of iOS, which admittedly is on its way to not being the predominant OS, but because it, for a time, was, Apple has now come under this oligopoly monopoly microscope that everybody else has been under for years, and Apple is going through some major adjustments to deal with that. The same thing with iTunes. iTunes is, like we said here, it's like Amazon's going to be dealing with regulation over books. iTunes is going to be dealing with regulation over music and media, and because
I don't think that they'll own movies. Music, I think they're closer to, but Amazon, I think, has presented enough competition to say that, well, Apple may have this agreement, but they're not at the level of saying, well, if you make an agreement with this person at this price, then we're going to punish you in X, Y, Z kind of manner. I think Apple hasn't. Apple's gotten on the radar of the government a few times.
Here's why I think they're closer to being on that radar than you want to put them. Apple is basically pulling a page out of the 1980s, and they've been doing this rather well. What they have been doing is going to high schools that'll take them, but colleges and trade schools, and basically going, you're going to give all of your students Apple. You're going to give your students Apple. You're going to put all your lectures.
What do you mean by? Because they're selling their equipment, right? What do you mean by that?
They're literally.
Dell goes to a school and sells Dells. They're all buying Dells.
There's a number of programs in certain industries right now where all students get an iPad or a MacBook Pro or.
Whose decision is that? Schools, right?
No, it's partly sponsored by Apple. Basically, Apple's entering into an agreement with them because they're an educational institution, and it's smart. It's good business. I'm
not going to buy that, though. Come on, the school's got to make. The school has to do, a requisition to bid, and I'm sure everybody steps up. Dell, HP. Maybe even Gateway in Apple for an educational bid, and then they entail the details. Okay, if you do take us, whether it's a Dell or an HP or an Apple, this is what comes with the package. I refuse to say, oh, well, because Apple has an educational plan that somehow makes them some predominant force.
No, I didn't say what they're trying to do is the same thing Microsoft did for years. Another thing, they're basically trying to get a whole generation of certain industries hooked on their product.
Well, everybody does that, but that's not monopolistic. I mean, if they owned all of the market, then, in other words, if it were impossible for Dell to even come close to offering.
Where that becomes monopolistic or has monopolistic shades is, say I'm a college freshman and I cannot complete my schoolwork unless I'm using an Apple product because I have to get my homework lectures from iTunes.
Okay, but that happens with me on Windows. When I went to
I agree. That is the problem I hate, regardless of who's doing it. Whether it's, I wouldn't care if it was a Linux-only product. You do not tie the educational system to a singular platform or market where students are hindered from getting an education by a platform choice. That's a detriment to
well, then that means that they have to go Linux or something. I mean, they'd have to
No. They basically,
Well, is Microsoft going to allow some? Okay, let's put it this way. I do know that on the Mac, Pages, their version of Word, which is called Pages, will open Word documents, and you can actually save a Word document with Pages. Their iWork suite. Now, Microsoft, I don't know if they can do vice versa to save me to a Pages format. But I know Microsoft will export a certain format. But I do think it's a problem that if a certain format is dictated, and believe me, in economics, when I was on my degree, it was a pain in the butt when we were doing charts. We had to do a specific, and it was like a specific version of Microsoft that we actually had to do. And I didn't even have that at home. I was like, dude, I'm like 3 years ahead of you.
No, but you have to be using the version the university gave you.
Yeah.
It's like, and this is why I have a problem with the books. It's like,
let's put context on that. I don't find no software really goes out of their way to make everything transgress all versions and all architectures and all operating systems. And that's just not a reality that happens unless it's open. I would say.
Well, no, that's the thing. The things that this is one of the things. One of the ways in which the iBookstore could still crush the Kindle would be if they can get the people who make the textbooks to put them in the iBookstore only. And I'm sure Apple's going to go for that.
Oh, okay. You're saying so the iBookstore would corner the market and say we want to have an exclusive right to your books, and you cannot go on ebooks or anything else.
Right. Well, and they've gotten that for a number of lectures and homework for college campuses. Like literally, they're
put it this way: if a university actually goes for iBook versus ebook, then they're crazy. I mean, I would say that that university, someone needs to take some medication or something, because iBooks is nowhere near ebooks.
Well, I agree with you, but they're putting their lectures on iTunes only. There's universities left and right signing our lectures that our students are required to interact with are iTunes exclusives. In other words, you can only get them from iTunes. So if you're on a computer that can't use iTunes or a device that can't access iTunes, you can't. Yeah, that would exclude Android, Linux, WebOS. It's to name but a few. That's a problem.
Hey, can you pause recording? My other kids are crying. I gotta go tend to them real quick. Give me a minute.
We will be right back, people.
Alright, I need to start anyway.